Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Getting the Most Out of Your Active Donors. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. We do have a chat and a Q&A. Our speakers may or may not answer that Q&A throughout, but we will have a Q&A session at the end. Without further ado, I will introduce today's speakers. Today we have Tim Maxton. Tim is the Senior Director of Annual Giving at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Jamie Veltri is the Senior Vice President of Enterprise Client Solutions for More. Shane Marple. Shane is the Vice President of Audience and Data Analytics for Simeo Cloud. And Catherine Swantes, Managing Director of Direct Marketing at Ducks Unlimited. So welcome, speakers. We're very excited to get started, and I will pass it over to you, Jamie.
Thanks, Joey. And really to start, we're going to have both Dana-Farber, Tim from Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and Catherine from Ducks Unlimited give us an overview of their organization and how they ladder up and serve the needs of the organization and their roles. Tim?
All right. Thank you, Jamie. Dana-Farber Cancer Institute was founded in Boston in 1947. We provide care and research, about 100,000 patient visits annually, 100,000 different patients, excuse me. And the research we're involved with is extensive. More than half the new drugs approved by the FDA between 2018 and 2022, Dana-Farber was involved in the research for those. The U.S. News and World Report ranks Dana-Farber as the top cancer center in New England and has done so 24 straight years. The annual giving program, our goals are probably like pretty much every annual giving program. We try to grow the donor base through acquisition and retention, and we try to increase donor value and revenue. We do that using strategies for donor upgrade and sustainer recruitment. We do that by targeting those strategies to the best prospects. And we accomplish those two things through an omni-channel marketing mix and the use of predictive models. And that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Tim. Catherine, if you could give us an overview for Ducks Unlimited. You're on mute, Catherine.
Thanks, sorry. Ducks Unlimited got its start in 1937 during the Dust Bowl. Waterfowl populations across North America were crashing, and drought had devastated all of their habitats. And so a few sportsmen got together and weren't going to stand for that. So they came together and formed Ducks Unlimited, and their focus was on habitat conservation. And that's still what drives us today. Fast forward a few decades, and we have grown into the world's largest private wetlands and waterfowl conservation organization. And we've conserved more than 19 million acres since we were founded in 1937. We have a huge event system, and that plays a huge part in alongside our direct marketing efforts. And so during COVID, we got to our time to shine in direct marketing as we grew significantly, and now events are back in full swing. We're seeing a little bit of a settling down of direct marketing back to its pre-pandemic levels. Our major goals for the direct marketing program right now are to segment smarter, and we're doing that by using data models to better understand donors and personalizing the way that we're communicating with them. The next is long-term value. We want to retain and really build those long-lasting relationships with our supporters and not just the one-time givers. We want to really retain those donors in a more effective way. And the last is stronger retention. As I was saying, we want to be able to keep the donors engaged, which is key to making more money and conserving more acres. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Catherine and Tim. It's great to hear about their incredible programs you're both managing and the impact that your organizations are having. And as we think about growing that impact, it's helpful to consider how we engage and grow our donor bases. And so one tool that can help us frame this is the donor value pyramid. Many organizations aim to move donors up the value pyramid, whether that's upgrading to mid-level or major donor, securing plan giving commitments, encouraging donor advised fund contributions, or converting one-time donors to sustainers. For general donors, who may not be likely to upgrade, the strategic focus shifts towards optimizing performance and maximizing net revenue. Tim and Catherine, could you provide us some insight on how your organizations approach the value pyramid? Tim, if you want to start.
Sure. Within the annual giving direct marketing program, we view major donors as, I'm thinking in terms of major annual giving level donors. So our mid-level starts at $250. Our major level starts at $1,500. But we see our direct response program as a feeder for the mid-level and for major, and also always trying to increase the number of sustainer donors that we have. And of note, too, now they've talked about major within the annual giving context, a few years ago, an analysis showed that most of our major donors, the one seven figure, etc., had their first gift to Dana-Farber through the annual giving program. And that's probably a common thing for all organizations. So it's really important to have programs for upgrading. Catherine?
Yeah, I would say we're very similar in that way. We are bringing donors on, members on at a $35 level and really trying to bring them up the pyramid. We're focusing highly on quality over quantity and trying to replenish that base with $35 members and using model-based segmentation to identify donors at any level that would have a higher potential for long-term giving as well as upgraded giving. So our focus is really on that donor quality and loyalty and lifetime value. We're also working on building a stronger mid-level strategy. We're working to prioritize deeper engagement with those donors. And we've just recently built that program and it's showing some really good promise. And then obviously being donor focused, not one size fits all, right? So we're trying to really provide strategies that match where people are.
Great. Thank you so much. Those are all great examples and thanks for sharing. We now like to ask participants a poll question. So I know Joey at the beginning said we'd have a couple poll questions throughout. So if you could please rank your top 3 organizational objectives related to your active donor audience, and we'll give everyone a minute to respond. I feel like we should have the Jeopardy music or something. All right, so I guess we're gonna move on here. Thanks for participating in the poll. It's always great to see input and have an idea of where everybody's thoughts are and focuses. So now let's dive into how modeling can be utilized to optimize donor value and really help drive donors up that value pyramid. So traditionally, donor selection for renewals and upgrades has primarily relied on RFM. So recency, frequency, and monetary value. Over time, organizations and agencies have enhanced this technique by layering in additional data points, such as channel responsiveness and even appended variables like income and net worth. But today, with the power of AI and machine learning, we can take donor selection and prioritization to an entirely new level. And we use our proprietary Simio Cloud Co-op combined with the expertise of our in-house data science team to build customized predictive models. These models help nonprofit organizations unlock the full potential of their existing donor base more precisely, more efficiently, and more profitably. And so every model we build is custom built to each organization's unique goals and how they define their audience. Because our modeling environment is built for full customization, if the data exists, we can create a model to predict virtually any behavior or outcome. This flexibility allows us to deliver highly tailored solutions, even for the most unique or specialized needs. That said, there are 7 core model types we most commonly build, and many of our clients use a combination of these models as part of their broader strategy. The first type of model is a donor renewal optimization model, and these models replace traditional RFM selection methods. These models identify donors most likely to respond and those likely to generate the highest revenue to renewal campaigns. Over 20 organizations have already replaced RFM with renewal models. Each monthly rescore includes a projection tool showing predicted response rates by segment. And this helps the organization not only select the best donors, but also determine how far into the universe they can afford to go before cost outweigh returns. Planned giving models help organizations identify donors most likely to commit a planned gift, allowing for more strategic outreach. Sustainer conversion models identify which donors are most likely to transition to recurring giving, boosting long-term donor value. And DAF models, or donor advised fund models, spotlight donors likely to give through a charitable investment account. And these models are useful for encouraging not only new DAF gifts, but helping to identify whether someone is already giving via a DAF. Mid-level and major donor models help identify donors with the capacity as well as the propensity to make larger gifts. And because mid-level and major definitions differ by organization, our modeling adapts accordingly. Offer assignment modeling is the newest type of model we've added to our suite, and those types of models determine which type of offer will resonate best with each donor. So a common use case, deciding who needs a premium incentive to respond and who doesn't, helping organizations cut unnecessary campaign costs. All of our models are built to deliver both precision and actionable insights. Ensuring the models align with an organization's strategy will help them meet their goals and align with their donors' behavior. But what really drives the success of our modeling solutions? And it really comes down to the strategic fusion of cutting-edge AI-based machine learning with one of the most comprehensive data sets in the industry, empowering smarter, faster decisions across every channel. We have one of the most comprehensive, uniquely sourced data sets available, covering every adult in the United States. One of the most predictive components of this data is our donation activity, sourced from over 650 nonprofit organizations. To date, this includes nearly 2 billion donor transactions across all channels. That's direct mail, digital, even DRTV. But that's just the beginning. Our data set also includes detailed demographic and lifestyle attributes, retail purchase behavior, voter registration data, and political affiliations. On average, we maintain tens of thousands of data points per individual, making this one of the richest data environments in the industry. Our platform is built on Snowflake's technology, enabling fast, scalable processing. This means our models can incorporate far more data than traditional co-ops, and critically, our data is refreshed in real time. In a space where recency drives results, this level of freshness really sets us apart. And identity resolution is another differentiator, and it's often one of the most overlooked components of a modern modeling tech stack, but it's also one of the most powerful. When we talk about identity resolution, we're not just referring to data hygiene. It's much more than that. True identity resolution means connecting the dots between real people across devices, platforms, and channels, and doing it in real time. The goal is to build one single unified view of each constituent. This requires access to rich and historical data, over 15 years of address and mover information, landline, mobile phone numbers, email addresses, and digital device IDs. And the more we know about an individual, the more precisely we can associate their behaviors, transactions, and actions, which means the more precise and more accurate our predictive models become. And predictive modeling is a powerful mathematical technique used to forecast future events or outcomes by analyzing historical patterns in data. When combined with AI-driven machine learning, we gain the ability to process and weigh tens of thousands of data points, helping us build a more accurate model. This is crucial because different types of donors exhibit unique behaviors, and understanding those nuances is key to success. Leveraging machine learning not only speeds up the process of delivering those insights, but it also allows us to quickly adapt to new trends and incorporate the latest techniques. This adaptability ensures we stay ahead of the curve, continuously refining our strategies for better results. So far, I've talked about what goes into our model builds, which in this infographic is everything on the left. This includes an organization's transaction data along with the full breadth of data from across our platform. But here's what happens next. We take the organization's universe of active donors and run them through the model. Think of the model like a sophisticated decoder ring. It analyzes each donor's data and places them into one of 20 segments. Segment 1 is the most likely to take the desired action, and segment 20 is the least likely. In addition to segment placement, each donor also receives a unique score. That score helps an organization to zero in on the very best donors within a segment. This is perfect for targeted one-to-one outreach or for prioritizing outreach when budget only allows engagement with a portion of a segment. No more random sampling. This enables strategic precision. We provide this full set of segment and score data back to the organization so the data can be seamlessly integrated into their systems, loaded into their CRM, loaded into the eCRM for use across teams, channels, and campaigns without any usage limitations. Now, it's worth noting how we differ from others in the space. Some providers will assign donors to one of 10 broad buckets and hand over a list of appended variables like income or giving history, leaving an organization's team members to figure out how to actually prioritize those donors. Our models already take those variables and thousands more into account. It's the combination of all of those data points together that drives meaningful prediction. So there's no need for additional appends or manual sorting. Just use the segments and scores to immediately identify the top donors. That means less time spent slicing data and more time focused on strategy, outreach, and driving results. We rescore the donor universe with the renewal model monthly, and this ensures we're capturing the most up-to-date donor signals. This also includes accounting for seasonality based on each donor's unique giving patterns. Our other models are typically rescored on a quarterly basis, but if there's a strategic need, we can increase that frequency. The outputs of the model are intended to be used across an organization, leveraged by the agency and fundraising communications for selection and package and offer customization, as well as utilized internally by plan giving and major gift officers and teams for portfolio development. Tim and Catherine, how are you using the model segments and scores? Tim, if you want to start.
Sure. Right now, really, we're primarily using them for informing our direct marketing population decisions for mail and email. Annual Giving does have prospect managers who have been using in-house models to help them determine their populations, but those models rely entirely on in-house data. We know what they're doing for Dana-Farber. We know where they live. We might know their age. It's not nearly the complexity and sophistication of what Jamie's just been describing. So I probably have to have a couple of internal conversations.
Yeah, and like Tim, we're doing very much the same thing, using the segmentation and scoring data to decide which donors we actually want to include in each campaign, as well as using them to identify best prospects for upgrades.
Thank you. So Shane?
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. So we're going to go through some slides to help visualize and talk through like why modeling outperforms other techniques. So to kick us off, let's start with a graph to help visualize how sophistication progresses along some of the different options of how to use data or modeling to make audience selects. So it varies across industry and organization how far along this curve you may be. Some verticals have embraced custom modeling for longer, while others are still leveraging more traditional RFM or generic approaches. However, it's not a step-by-step process. So if you're currently doing RFM selects, you do not need to do the interim steps before doing custom modeling. You can fast forward directly there. I also like to note that underscoring all of these methodologies is always proper strategy and implementation. No matter how advanced a modeling methodology is, implementation is critical to overall performance. The goal here should be to move to more mature and advanced methodologies that drive more value for an organization. Let's go through an analogy comparing custom modeling with baking a cake to try to visualize some comparisons on each of these methods. Starting high level, let's compare RFM style selects. With RFM, you have data elements you know about a donor, how recently they gave, how frequently they give, how much on average, maybe their channels of giving. But how do you know how to combine those? What's the optimal mix? How do those elements mix overall? Are you missing key information? The corollary is imagine a pastry chef trying to bake a cake with only a list of ingredients. Depending on their expertise, they might be able to combine them in ratios that aren't wildly wrong. But if you have me instead of a chef, you might end up with runny soup instead of a cake. Either way, baking a cake without recipe isn't the right way to get the perfect and repeatable outcome. Baking is a science in a lot of ways, just like data modeling is. Now let's talk about how modeling changes that. With a predictive model, you end up with a more robust mix of data points, all with weights on how to properly combine them. This factors in more elements than just RFM with a given organization. It includes giving across similar sectors, across all nonprofit giving, donor net worth, political affiliation, and other demographic and psychographics. Similarly to the pastry chefs, you now know your proper ratios are 1 egg to 3 cups of flour to 1 cup of milk with half a cup of butter and what order to combine those ingredients in. It's worth noting here that modeling takes into account any intuitive selects based on a specific data point you might think are necessary. For example, in a major donor audience, you might think you need to filter the audience on net worth or giving levels, but all of those things are taken into account in the overall model equation and balanced to their proper ratios. Maybe even more complex is that in modeling, you may have variables that when you combine them, one of the two actually has a negative correlation to the prediction. That's the type of thing that custom AI models capture that are not intuitive to a person doing manual select combinations. Imagine in your baking that for every egg you add in the mix, you need correspondingly 1 cup less flour. That's how models are even more dynamic than a set recipe. Custom modeling is the most sophisticated and successful because custom models are built for specific organizations tailored on their donors and their characteristics. This results in varying weights of variables per organization the model is built for. As you can see in the visual, the relative importance of each type of variable may vary depending on the characteristics of the donors we are modeling on for that given organization. Just like one cake recipe doesn't cover every type of cake you want to make, one generic model doesn't cover the uniqueness of donors to different organizations, or even within an organization given the differing goals of renewal or sustaining or major donor. The Simio database is incredibly robust in how it combines many disparate data elements to create a comprehensive view of donor behavior. Another way of saying that, imagine trying to create RFM selects using 45,000 plus variables, or imagine trying to bake a cake with 45,000 ingredients. Wouldn't be possible, and that highlights why custom modeling driven by AI is the key to accurately combining all of this rich data to paint the full picture of a donor to drive the model's goal outcome. So I like this visual to try and capture maybe like how intuitively there may be different groupings within an organization's donor file. On the x-axis, we have potential donor value, and on the y-axis, we have likely engagement with the organization. So within that, you end up with some different quadrants of donors. In the top right, you have people who are high wealth and potential value and highly engaged with an organization. These bubbles are smaller as like this is a finite universe of people that meet that criteria. These would represent the portion of the house file best to target for major or planned giving. Comparatively, in the top left, you have lower overall value donors that are also highly engaged with the organization. These would represent a larger portion of the house file and should be the type of donors targeted for renewal or sustaining offers, maybe. In the bottom left, we have donors that are low value and low engagement. We should identify these donors via low model ranking and save on costs by not marketing to them as much or at all. These groupings help highlight how different custom models pull out the proper subsets within a donor file for a given goal. And to try to quickly help visualize some of these points, let's look at the output of a major donor model on a given organization. So here you see the scoring of a major donor model on an organization's house file. You end up with 20 segments with the counts of donor by segment and how they break down by their individual score values, which are ranked descending, with the highest scored donor being the best person to send to the major gift officers to work with. Here we show how those donors that ranked in segment 1 break down by past giving activity. You can see that most donors high ranking in this model have given a large volume of gifts to the organization, but we also know that they give often across the database. For example, you can see that around 5,000 of the donors in segment 1 have only given one gift to the organization, but that count is virtually 0 on co-op giving. That highlights how co-op modeling paints a fuller picture of the donors than just RFM would show. Here we show how donors that ranked in segment 1 break down by prior giving totals. Again, we see that directionally, most donors ranking highly in the model for major donor propensity have given more to the organization previously, both in lifetime giving and max giving. However, we also see, for example, that only 4,741 of these donors have given $10,000 plus to the organization. We know of 18,231 that have given 10,000 plus across other co-op giving, which just continues to highlight the importance of going beyond RFM style selects to paint the full picture of how donors give. And here we show the how donors that ranked in segment 1 break down by typical high-level demographics. So as you would generally expect, on average, the best major donor prospects are older with higher wealth or income stats. However, you can also see that if an organization was just appending wealth data to their donor file, it would be an incomplete story. In this case, for example, almost half of the ideal major donor universe has an income under $100,000. When you look at wealth, a meaningful 56% fall into the highest wealth bracket, but conversely, a meaningful 21% have the lowest 4 wealth brackets. Custom modeling takes away the need to guess at which of those data elements is important and how to combine them. It covers RFM style data, complete giving history data, and any licensed data elements, creating a much higher value comprehensive solution that saves organizations time and data licensing costs. And now, given all that information on modeling, let's dive into some case studies from a few of our clients who have leveraged custom predictive models. And I think Tim will get us started.
All right, thank you, Shane. Dana-Farber began partnering with Moore 2.5 fiscal years ago in October of 2022, taking a measured approach, what we call the crawl, walk, run strategy, first year crawl. And now we're run or walking really fast. Imagine the bus is coming, so you pick up your pace a bit. There's still more for us to do to get to run. We are currently using 4 Simeo journey models for likely to upgrade to annual giving, major giving, upgrade to mid-level annual giving, sustainer recruitment, and then just simply likely to renew the donor renewal optimization concept that Jamie mentioned a few slides earlier. This gets the right ask strategy in front of the right people. But the models also help us hold costs down by not mailing to those people in the lower left quadrant that Shane was just showing us. And we combine this with an omni-channel marketing mix. Historically, we've been using multiple channels for quite some time: mail, email, social media, digital targeted ads, etc. But now we're aligning those channels better. Donors who are identified through the models as likely sustainers, for example, they're going to get sustainer asks consistently across channels. And looking in the lower right corner here of your screen, we've seen, as a result of this, a 27% increase in active donor value. Now, this is looking at the entire active donor file. Imagine if we narrowed our focus and just reported on the results of those donors who were modeled highly as likely to upgrade. I'm certain that the effectiveness of those models actually exceeds the 27% figure here, were it not muddied, if you will, by new donors coming on board. Not that I mind them. And bottom line, these omni-channel strategies and the models have enabled us to outpace trends nationwide in the healthcare sector. And I'm optimistic that there's continued growth awaiting us. As I say, we're not fully, in my estimation, in the run phase of crawl, walk, run. Catherine, I think you're up next. Yeah.
Yep. At DU, our main objective was to grow our net revenue. We're focusing on doing that by adjusting our select methodology and putting a bigger focus on mid-level upgrade strategies. To help accomplish these objectives, we've used the Simeo renewal as well as the mid-level upgrade models. Results have been really positive. On the select side, we went from a very convoluted select process that was based on RFM, but considered event giving as well, to using the renewal model. Using the renewal model for campaigns is a much simpler, more effective process. And in backtesting, we found that comparing RFM to the model, 75% of the audience would have been selected through the model, and that audience generated 99% of the revenue. So this was a low risk adjustment for us to make, and knowing that the model would do a better job at identifying the donors most likely to respond, we could either reduce our mail quantities or mail productive donors that RFM wasn't identifying, and improve revenue. We've been using the renewal model for campaign selection since the fall of 2023, and we just started using the mid-level model, and we're just starting to realize it and looking to layer on the renewal model with the mid-level model to identify the donors that most likely respond and upgrade. And so we're mailing those prospects mid-level packages, as well as including the identified audience in mid-level telephone campaigns as well.
Thanks so much, Catherine and Tim, for sharing the results that you've seen and your use of the models so far. I'm excited to see what the future shows as we expand that usage and continue to grow your programs. I think Joey is going to, facilitate questions and answers. before we have our closing poll.
Yes, absolutely. So I did get a question offline. Does Simio provide models that determine channel behavior? So online versus direct mail?
Great question. So applying flags of direct mail responsive or online responsive can actually be incredibly misleading and could lead to strategic missteps that could hurt overall performance. So usually those types of flags are based on the channel a donor responded through, not the channel they responded to. There's an important distinction. And we see time and again that donors are influenced to give via one channel and then they respond via another. So trying to limit model universes or audience selections based on a flag on prior giving channel can have adverse effects on performance. So Simio is an omni-channel database, and our models are built considering donation activity from all channels to build the optimal prediction for a given model. And this results in targeted audiences that can be deployed across many channels. And some models may cater to certain channels more. So an example, a model built on an organization's past sustainers is likely going to use a lot of digital giving history because sustainers historically don't convert to sustainers via mail. So the key there is the degree to which a channel data is used is determined by modeling algorithms rather than human intuition to make manual selects. Really, at the root of any modeling, you simply can't effectively predict how a donor is going to respond, which is why, no, we don't really provide, oh, this is an online responsive or direct mail responsive donor. We really focus on predicting if a donor is going to respond after being communicated with. And from there, it's a matter of giving the donor the opportunity to respond via as many channels as possible.
That's awesome. So another question is, there are more than 45,000, but how many different variables are used after dimensionality reduction? Do you want
That's
to
a good
take that one?
question.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a good question. So yeah, the answer is we have 45,000 plus variables available. Those are not, of course, being stuffed into every model. Not every model needs all of those to paint the proper picture. We use some, in-house algorithms to whittle that pool down and come to the right mix. So any one model will vary quite a bit in the scope of variables it uses, depending on what we're predicting to. But we make all of the potential variables available for a model to look at and evaluate. Does it move the needle in predicting future response for this objective? If yes, it's included in the model, right? And if no, or we already have that explained or captured in other variables, then they're left out.
And I think, Shane, I recently asked you a similar question, and I think you looked and the range was anywhere from like 80 to like 100 plus in our average journey models. And I'm sure the range is probably even bigger than that, but that was just like off the cuff, Shane looking at a couple models, what he came back with.
Yeah, it can vary quite a lot. I think we certainly don't want to have too many predictors in there that are not moving the needle. So it's a range, but yeah, it can be in the low hundreds pretty regularly across the model types.
Great. So does an organization need to take all types of models, or can they just start with one or two?
I can take that one. I think like the number and the mix of models like an organization can take varies a lot based on that organization. When I say that, we have some organizations we're doing renewal and lapsed modeling for. We have some we're doing renewal and sustainer, some we're doing major and sustainer, and some the full suite. There's really not like a one size fits all answer there. And I'd say it's often tied as much to the organization's programs and budgets as it is the optimal modeling mix, right? We have to meet like the suite of products with where the organization is at. Can't give a sustainer model to an organization that doesn't have a sustainer program yet, right? So those things have to line up. I think we would, of course, encourage clients to take the full suite of solutions, as we think that's the optimal way to drive the overall value and revenue, as well as building loyalty with your donors. But like Tim said, with crawl, walk, run, we can meet you where you are and start out with a smaller suite and build that up as you start to implement the models and learn how to use them and work with strategists to roll them out.
Right. We have a chat question. Can you review whether there are legal uses of publicly available political giving data via the Federal Election Commission in modeling?
So I would say, to answer that one, like, we do have pretty robust licensed political data. We get that from sources that gather that data and follow all the proper like legal protocols to do it. And those laws do vary by state. So of course, the degree to which we capture information varies by state legislature and other pieces. So I can say all of our political affiliation and history data is compliant with the laws by state as we gather it from our outside vendor. I guess I would also say on that continues to change too, and is something we're always evaluating. Like, I think we've done that a lot of times, even in the last year, or however much it is. Like, each state continues to pass new legislation, and that changes sometimes the type of variables we can capture on individuals there. So when that happens, we're updating the database and removing elements that we're not legally supposed to keep on people that live there, and making sure we're always up to date on that side of it.
So this is another question I've gotten in the chat and the Q&A. So what are Simio Cloud's key differentiators? And probably both you, Shane, and Jamie can both answer that one, if you can.
Yeah, so I'll start, and then if Shane has anything else to add. So I think one of the big things is that Simio Cloud was founded and built just a few years ago. So that means our tech stack has been fully established using the best modern options available. And it's not in an environment that's 20 years old or older. And that enables the fast, scalable processing that I referenced earlier and real-time updating. Real-time updates of the database ensure that every model build and scoring leverages the absolute freshest data in the database. And as we all know, recency is king. There's already often a large lag time between direct mail audience fulfillment and marketing campaigns. So extending that delay in recency of the data by another 2 to 4 weeks based on database update timing is detrimental to overall performance. So having that real-time updating is very powerful and very important. An example of one of the many practical benefits of our modernized tech stack is that we're not limited to the number of promotion files to consider in model builds. In the case of custom renewal modeling, this is extremely important. We wouldn't want to limit each model to only being exposed to 3 or 4 past promotions. Our modern systems allow us to consider as many as we want per model, and we often use upwards of 24 months of promotion history across channels for renewal model builds. So we're easily looking at 30 plus promo files when we're building one renewal model. Another differentiator is our identity resolution process and robust identity graph. Rolling up data at the individual level allows us to have that precise targeting and audience prediction. Whereas if we would just roll the data up at the household level, that can mask key indicators of future behavior. Simio has also internally developed identity resolution processes that are worked on by our team of data scientists to ensure we properly make connections across many disparate data sources, and that includes across channels. And that's where we have the digital device IDs and all of those elements that really help us connect the online data elements with the offline data elements. I don't know, Shane, if you have anything else to add.
I think that's great. Yeah. Covers a lot of it, at least. I think I would say a part of it is, so it can be hard to speak of those differentiators because a lot of the key pieces to data analysis and how you manipulate data across like hundreds and hundreds of millions of rows of data is really nuanced. Those end up rolling up into the larger categories like Jamie talked about, but those are how you move the needle marginally along the way in a business where a couple percent or partials of a percent are big drivers of success.
Cool. I have a question now for Tim and or Catherine. What were any unexpected insights from using effective modeling?
I can take that one. And I think just being able to reduce the number of renewals that we sent, appeals that we sent based on the modeling. I think when we finally got down to it and we could basically cut 25% of the population and gain 99% of the revenue we would have gotten with RFM. We just really were able to reuse that money in other ways. And that was the most surprising piece to me.
I would second that and add in the increase in the donor value that we're seeing. That, as I mentioned, it's 27%, and it would be higher if we isolated the data looking only at those who were targeted. And that's something that I find really helpful. And one thing that we need to explore more is going into the digital more with the models and informing those targeting strategies. So that's more growth for Dana-Farber to work on.
Absolutely. We have time for a few more questions before we launch those final polls. The next question is, do the reactivation donors receive any kind of penalty for not giving to qualify them to be selected?
That's where it's important that you build a model and the way that it's going to be used. And so whenever we have organizations that are using like waterfalling and selecting from lapsed audiences in the renewal campaigns, we'll actually build two separate models, one that's focused on, say, 0 to 24-month donors, and the other model that's focused on, say, 25 to 60-month donors. And then we'll waterfall them and say, okay, you should use the renewal model, the 0 to 24-month model through segment 6, and then switch to segment 1 of the lapse model, because of the variables that kind of ping up that are different between the models. So a renewal model is very much focused on RFM giving to the organization, and lapse models shift more to RFM based on giving in the co-op. And that's why if you would score a lapsed audience with a renewal model, some of those donors would likely fall towards the bottom. But again, it's why you have to have the right decoder ring for the right audience to make sure that everything's aligning and that you're using it the best way and getting the most out of it.
Absolutely. And then this is maybe a growth question. I know that we're growing and Simio is growing in our product line. What would it be as effective for institutions outside of the US?
Yeah, I think the answer there is at this point, like Simio's modeling suite is targeted towards organizations within the US. I think if it's an organization outside the US that gets US donors, all right, we could work there. But due to a number of reasons around data privacy and other pieces, like we are a domestic database at this point.
Right. So this question I think will take us into our final polls. Do you have situations where your data and modeling capabilities are used prescriptively rather than just predictively to reveal opportunities for new messaging, offers, and even programs based on audience dynamics?
Yeah, it's a super good question. Most of what we covered here is in regards to audience prediction, right? So predicting the right donors and the right audience for a given program. I think that's still a huge piece of the value add of the Simio database, but we are exploring products that do help drive that beyond who you should target. It's who you should target and what and with what, right? Amongst your existing creatives or packages. Are they more likely to respond to package A or package B, that kind of thing. So in the future, we are going to have some products launching around that, and we do have some of those capabilities today. I think you pair those two together with predictions on who to target and to target with what, and that's where we really start getting to the goal of one-to-one marketing, which is definitely something more is driving to.
Awesome. And with that, I will remind everyone that this webinar is recorded and you can find that on our website, wearemore.com after tomorrow, or on our LinkedIn. So follow us on LinkedIn and get that, be the first to get that. Right now, I'm going to launch a poll. How are you currently selecting your current donors for communications via RFM, predictive modeling? So I will launch that and give it a few seconds. And I'm going to see if I can launch another one in conjunction with this one. What is your biggest takeaway today? in a word or two. That may have stopped my last poll. We'll see. And then I'll go ahead and launch the last one. Can journey models help you? Yes, definitely. Not sure. No, probably not. Once again, thank you for giving us this insight, and thank you to our speakers. We'll give it a few minutes to finish answering these polls. Thank you again for that, and reach out to us. Jamie Veltri just put her email address up there. We'd love to hear from you. And once again, check out the recording and share that. Leave these polls open for another few minutes or another few seconds, since we're almost at the top of the hour. Do our speakers have anything? Do you have any wisdom to share before we start today's webinar?
I just want to thank Tim and Catherine for working with us today. Very much
Yeah,
appreciated.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you both. And thank you, Shane and Jamie.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank
Great.
you.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.